G'day everyone, I'm Kim, and in this video I'm going to show you how to paint a red-tailed black cockatoo feather step by step using watercolor. For the materials you will need watercolor paper, paint, tape and spray, a cloth, brushes, large and a small round, and 2 jars of water. One for dirty water and one for clean water. You can use paper towel instead of a cloth. It's just for wiping your brush to make it clean so that your water doesn't get too dirty. This is a feather of a forest red-tailed black cockatoo that's native to the southwest part of Western Australia where I live. These cockatoos are listed as vulnerable. They're mostly black with grey beaks, with the underside of their tail feathers either having bright red bands if they're male or more yellow-orange if they're female. The females also have yellow spots on their cheeks and wings. Juveniles start out resembling the females, and over a period of about 4 years, their yellow tail feathers become red. And for that reason, I suspect that the feather we're painting today is a late juvenile male's tail feather. Spend a few minutes looking closely at the feather. Consider the shapes, the lines. Pick up your feather. Feel the texture of it at different parts. Maybe even let your eyes close and just let your sense of touch take over. Have full attention, because this will help your painting become more realistic, since you will actually try to get across these characteristics. So the Lineart and photo reference are going to be linked in the description below for you to download and use. Now, the techniques you'll learn from this tutorial can be applied to any feather, so feel free to use your own if you prefer. I would also recommend doing some practice sketches, maybe even a blind contour drawing. Prepare colour mixes for the colours you see in the feather. So I've used the following Art Spectrum watercolours: Australian Grey, Yellow Ochre, Australian Red Gold, Pilbara Red, and Ultramarine Blue. I've used them pure and in mixes. For the shaft, I would recommend a pale pinkish grey. For the red part, a pale warm yellow, an orange and a deep red. For the rest of the feather, a dark warm brown and a bluish black, mixed from your yellow and red. For the light wash, I'm starting by making sure that my paint is wet by spraying it with a bit of water to activate them first. Then, when you're ready, pre-wet the areas you're going to paint with clean water and a large round brush, starting with the areas that are going to have the lightest colours first. So here that's going to be the grey for the end of the feather and the yellow part in the red shape. For this first stage, use a dilute wash, so lots of water, and keep in mind that it will actually lighten as it dries. Once you've set that down, I would use a bit of clean water to spread the edges just so it fades softly and has a nice blur rather than a sharp edge. Next, while the paper is still wet, you can add the orange. Now if you think it's too dark or too wet, you can always lift any excess paint or water from the page using either a clean brush or some paper towel or tissue. At this stage, you don't need to worry about the edges of the yellow and orange where they meet the darker parts of the feather, because we're going to cover them up anyway. Once you've added the orange, wet the rest of the section and you can add the red. Moving to the dark brown and black parts, wet the paper again with clean water first, taking care to avoid the areas that might still be wet, especially those with a lighter colour, so like the end of the feather. The dark brown is close to the bottom right, while the blue-black areas of the feather are on the thin side and up towards the tip. Once you've got a light wash of colour over the whole feather, let it dry completely. I've changed to a smaller brush, but I keep swapping back and forth because some areas are larger to cover and are annoying with the smaller brush, but use the smaller brush for the detail and the edges now. I'm just going to keep adding layers to darken the colors so that they match the correct value of the feather. So I'm adding another layer of red and orange, but I'm avoiding the lighter yellow part at this stage because I think that's good. While the paper's still wet, you can use a dry brush and spot in some of the orange onto that yellow section for the little speckles. The paint should now be still quite liquidy, but with more pigment, so darker than before, first light washes. Darken the brown and blue-black parts in the same way. You'll notice that I haven't been pre-wetting the paper because that's not necessary at this time. We don't really want that soft blurry look necessarily anymore. In fact, having a bit of a dry brush effect can help towards giving the illusion of the individual strands in the feathers. Make sure to paint in the same direction as the growth. Where the dark part joins the red, start using small jagged lines to indicate individual strands and a little bit of a ragged edge. Start from the darkest part at the tip of the feather and then move towards the lighter parts, because you're going to have the darkest pigment on the brush first, and then as you add a bit more water or wet the brush, you're going to inevitably dilute the paint. Add some colour to the shaft too, leaving the edge towards the red part white for a bit of a highlight and to avoid colours mixing if that section's still wet. Towards the bottom where the shaft loses colour, use a clean wet brush to blur the edge of the brown and get a nice soft transition. There's a tiny amount of black edging on the red section, so use a thin, small round brush to add some of the dark brown or black to it, ensuring the areas dry first to have that clean, crisp edge. Once again, let everything dry completely. You might need to add another layer to darken the black to the right value. That's okay, just keep going and adding more layers, but make sure they're dry between. For the final touches, I like to use watercolour pencils. If you prefer to use watercolour or gouache with a fine round brush, then that's fine too. Make sure they're sharp. Add some lines indicating the different strands, some with blue, others with black or dark brown. This will give a little bit of variety and hint at the different colours in that black feather. I've added blue to the left of the feather because that's where the light was hitting it. Also emphasize the edge of the shaft and the little loose strands at the bottom. On the inside of the shaft, in the red region, there's just a touch of yellow, so dot a few barely visible parts there. With the white, add the little holes in and around the feather, and importantly, the highlight on the shaft will really make this image pop. Doesn't need much though. And there are these two little notch marks at the bottom of the feather too. Little details like this can really make the piece feel realistic. Do the same for the red and the orange part, and maybe add some little yellow flecks too. You can smooth any pencil lines that are too rough or too stark with a fine-tipped wet brush. I'd love to see how your finished artwork comes out, so remember to tag me on Instagram when you do share. Please like and subscribe if you want more art tutorials like this, and feel free to let me know in the comments below any topics you'd like me to cover next. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.